Today's episode is brought to you by Media for All, which was set up to help encourage more Black, Asian, and other ethnic talent into media, and to provide a support and mentoring network to ensure talent flourishes in the media industry that we all love. If you're looking for a mentor or would like to mentor young ethnic talent, check them out at mediaforall.org.uk, and it is all 100% free. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing some of our industry's leaders, and this week is no different. I'm on a call with Rafael Espesani, who is Senior Brand Manager, UK and Ireland at Mondelēz International. Rafa, welcome to the podcast. Could you give the audience a bit of background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Tom. Thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here today. So, yes, I work for Mondelēz, and I've been working for them for the last 2 years, leading the refreshment platform for the UK and Ireland. So, looking after some iconic brands in the likes of Trebor and Halls. And yeah, I have more than 11, 12 years working experience in marketing. Actually, I started my career working finance, and I worked for some like big American corporations like IBM, and then I decided to move and switch to marketing. I spent 6 years with Unilever between Brazil and the UK, doing local, regional, global roles. And then eventually I moved on to Amazon as a marketing manager for gift cards. After Amazon, I joined Pladis, formerly United Biscuits, doing innovation for Jacobs, the savory portfolio. And then I joined Mondelēz, as I said, back in 2018.
Wow, that is quite the CV. I think that's the most varied we've had on the podcast so far. Brilliant. So, interested to know that you flipped from finance to marketing. Was that it? What made that change come about?
Yeah, no, that's a question I get quite often. In fairness, a few people get surprised when they hear about my financial background. I think what drove me to make that change, and this was 11, 12 years ago, was because I went to business school, it gave me really the possibility to choose my career, and then I could do literally anything. So I went for finance initially because I thought I'll make a lot of money there, and most of my friends they were very keen in on finance too. So I thought, okay, maybe that's what I want. And then suddenly I realized it was not really for me. I was not getting pleasure from that job. And more importantly, I couldn't see myself doing that in the long run. So I was like, you know what? I need something a bit more meaningful, something that brings my passion out. And that's why I came across marketing. And then I fell in love with marketing. I remember my marketing classes. I was like, wow, this is really good. And for me, the beauty of marketing and the reason why I'm still in the industry is because I love the idea of being behind a big brand and actually the impact brands have in people's life. I know it can sound a bit cheesy, but I honestly believe in the role of marketing in this sense, how we can impact the society, how we can bring something new to the world and improve consumers' life. So that was my main motivation.
So, in this varied career, what has been the best investment of your time, energy, or money?
I would say definitely studying was really important, of course, not only studying like going to uni, but doing a few courses, really understand what is the latest capabilities people are looking for in the industry, studying different languages and so on. So really getting prepared for the market. But I think there's something about my personality. I judge myself being the kind of creative guy, and I need to get the creativity juice flowing in my brain, basically. So I really enjoy observing what's going on around the world, what's going on in different places. And I really try to combine with a very personal passion that I have, which is traveling. So I think I spend a lot of time trying to really learn from people and learn from observing, as I said, consumer behavior. Because sometimes if you ask people what they want, what they like, they don't tell you, or they will not tell the reality. But if you observe and then you try to get to that inside yourself, you're gonna get to a good answer. So I think I've been spending a lot of time really trying to identify trends in the industry, try to anticipate what's going on and what's happening in the world and how this will transform the industry, the market. So being really curious, it takes time because you need to make the effort actually to be open-minded and to go after new things all the time. So probably that has been one of my big investment, more around time rather than anything else. So really being close to the industry. And I think the second point I would say is really take the time to reflect on your self development. So it's something really important for me. And I'm a big supporter of self development, understanding yourself, your behavior, your emotions. So I think this will help you also to be more successful in the workplace because at the end of the day, we're humans, right? But you need to understand how you portray yourself, how you convey your emotions, how you manage all of that. So thinking ways to improve yourself, even if it's just a tiny bit every day, that will get you far.
So, on the latter point, in examining and studying and reflecting on yourself, how do you do that? Do you have a process? Is it an app, or is it a book, or is it just going for a glass of wine under a tree on a hill somewhere?
Yeah, no, I think there are lots of options, and especially with the pandemic lockdown, I kind of acquired new habits. So I think definitely mindfulness has become something big for me, like using apps that give you some kind of meditation exercise. They give you some talks as well, help you even to sleep better. I've been using those. I personally enjoy seeing a therapist and just like as like ongoing support. I think that's really important because it helps you almost put my ideas in perspective and see things differently. So that's something that I personally do and I really enjoy. I like to read sometimes some behavior books. Like a good example was the mind management, the chimp paradox. I think that was a good one for me as well. But yeah, really just reading. And to be honest, I'm not a big reader of books, but I love reading things. So usually I go for more like specialized websites. If you think about the marketing industry, we're talking about Ad Age, The Drum, Marketing Week. They always sharing lots of insights, and there's so many content available online, like TED Talks, for instance, that is really good. So there's so many platforms out there that can support you through this journey.
So, what from all of this learning and studying and examination and looking at the external world, what new belief or behavior has transformed your work life in the last few years?
That's a very good question. I think there are two things for me that made a difference. The first one was really trying to adopt agility over perfection mindset. And I know people love to say this in job interviews, right? I'm a perfectionist, but in this case, it is when perfectionism can become an obstacle in your deliverables, or it can become a challenge. So how do you put that aside and really focus on what is important and what you need to deliver? It can be agility over perfection, it can be 80-20 rule, whatever we want to describe. But for me, that was really important because then I'm really maximizing my efforts and putting my energy on the right things. So that definitely has helped me to be more efficient and be even more successful in a way. And I think the second one for me was more when it comes to finding work-life balance. So flexible work is something that I've been experimenting for the last 6 years or so, I would say, since I moved to the UK. And I think I was really lucky because Unilever is a very progressive company and there was a benefit they would offer in 2014, 2015. So now has become something really big, accelerated again by the pandemic. But even years ago, that was already part of my reality. And coming from Brazil, where my family is very far, having this ability to travel back home, working remotely, maybe a few weeks during the year, that makes me really actually makes me feel a better professional because my personal life is there. I can protect that at the same time I can keep doing my job. So finding the flexible working that works for me was really important. And sometimes people think flexible work is just remote working, but it's not. It's just understanding what time of the day, for instance, you're more productive. And I think because there's so many people working from home now, I do hope people explore and find out more about themselves when it comes to this. A good example is like I'm very creative in the evening. So sometimes my team will get emails from me like 7, 8, 9 p.m., I'm not expecting them to reply straight away. Actually, Mondelēz is a great company saying you're not expected to reply the message at this time. I'm working at the time that works best for me. But that's how it works for me. Sometimes if I need to pull a brief together, that'll be the best time of the day. And then some other people, they'll be more productive in the morning. So it's really important to use that on your favor and understand when you can get the most of yourself.
So there's already been so many great bits of advice in what you've said, but I'm keen to know what advice you would give to someone who is really young, someone who is really new to the industry, a student who wanted to either break in the industry or succeed in it. What advice would you give to that smart, driven student?
I think the first one I kind of gave away when I was talking about why I moved from finance into marketing. So my advice would be really find your passion, really find what makes your heart beat faster, and just, yeah, follow your heart. I think for me that's so important because if you think about work is something we will be doing for many, many years and many hours in your day. So it's better if you find something that you enjoy doing. I'm not saying everything will be perfect because nothing is, but if you find something that you really enjoy, something you get pleasure from it, that will be so much easier. And of course, as a consequence, when you love what you do it better and you do it easier. So it's almost like it's a win-win situation because you're enjoying, but also you're learning, you're progressing, developing yourself. So that for me would be probably the first one. And the second one, if I could give two advices, the second one would be about really be open-minded and experiment as much as possible, especially in your early career. So really try to do different roles, experiment with different industry, different companies, collect a lot of knowledge because the sooner you grow, the more specialized you become in a way, and then the harder it is a transition from one industry to the other. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we know the funnel gets narrow and narrow. So I would say try to get as much experience and breadth of expertise in your early days because that will make you a more well-rounded marketeer.
If you love all things innovation and want to understand how brands plan to emerge stronger from the current situation, don't forget to check out MadFest London on the 11th and 12th of November. My good friend Dan at MadFest knows how to put on a cracking event, and there's always plenty of amazing speakers, beer, and cool people to meet. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. We are loosely at the halfway stage, which means we are going to discuss your shiny new object. So we've talked about it a bit. It's going to be digital personalization at scale, which is almost as shiny and new as it gets. Very close to my heart, and very interested to hear what you have to say about it. But I know what digital personalization at scale is to me, but could you describe what that is to the audience from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be talking about digital personalization at scale, mostly in the context of media. So when we define personalization, basically means anything that we are tailoring for a specific individual based on their actual behavior and their actual needs. So that's the roughly definition of personalization. If you think about digital personalization at scale, is basically how can we get the right consumer with the right message in the right moment. So that's a bit of the definition we have. The personalization scale, very similar to you, Tom, is very close to my heart, something that I really like talking, and I've been living and breathing this topic in the last 2 years, my current role as well. So the brands I've been working for, we try to optimize our budget as much as we can, but we know the main objective is to be efficient. So when you turn to personalization at scale, you're looking to engage better with your consumer, and as a consequence, you're looking to achieve a higher return on investment because you'll be improving your effectiveness. So I think many companies have really attempted to do personalization at some point through their journey. And initially, and a few years ago, probably they were doing that mostly through range offering. So a good example, I think, is hair care brands. So a few years ago, they started offering loads of different products for different types of hair with different benefits. And that has caused some other problems that we are facing now, like brand personalization. But that was a good way of offering personalization to your consumer. But now what we're talking about is consumers, they are bombarded with messages all the time. If you go to your Facebook or to your Instagram, you're going to have so many things to scroll through. And what is the thing that actually going to make your thumb stop? And that's why for us is so important. Our CMO at Mondelēz also, he's always emphasizing that this is something we should focus more and more. So it's almost really part of the culture. And I think it's important to understand that when we talk about personalization at scale, it's not like just adding more layers to your process when you're thinking about how to deliver a successful campaign, but actually it's just thinking how you do things differently, because it does require a different process to set it up. But it's just like how you see that as a different framework instead of creating complexity and not going to the right direction.
So you mentioned earlier that you've done a lot of this work. Can you talk about any recent examples of your work that you've done where you've successfully implemented digital personalization at scale?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, I look after Treebo, which is the #1 mints brand in the UK. And then I look after Halls as well, which is the #1 cough relief candy in the UK. And for both brands, I've done personalization at scale campaigns recently. Maybe a good one to call out is the one with Halls that we did last year. And we established a partnership with the Met Office. And then we try to find what would be the relevant moments to talk about relief, and in this case, we're talking about cough and cold relief with our products. So we worked with the Met Office, and then we worked with Twitter because that was the platform we want to use to get this message across to consumers. We identify which would be the occasions our consumers were more likely to need the product. So thinking about their ritual, their routine, and also their points of interest, what could be those occasions? So we defined that together. So a few examples was commuting, um, or if the weather was turning, so if the forecast was showing some like heavy rain or a bit of wind coming town in the next couple of days, and we would personalize the message we would show in that time of the day or that day of the week. So we had maybe 3 4 different creatives with different copies, and then the asset would be pushed out and it would be served to our consumers according to what was happening. So that was just a way to really drive relevance for our brand. And I think that's something really special about personalization scale. You're not only delivering awareness, but you're going a bit deeper into the funnel. You're talking about salience, you're talking about relevance, and you do make your consumer consider you more, because then you are in the right context. You're putting perspective like why they should care about what they see. And I think that was really good for us, especially for brand awareness. And it was a great example how you combine like weather, which is a different trigger, but it has um, a lot of connection with our territory of cough and cold relief suites, and how you can bring your brand and find the role for that situation.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did. It did. In terms of awareness, for us, it was very successful. And when we do these things, and one of the principles of personalization at scale actually is you need to make sure you're able to track and monitor your performance, because you need to learn from that and you need to keep optimizing. So for us, it was important to establish what kind of study we would get from this partnership and from this activity with Twitter. And all these platforms, they always have some solutions. Of course, it's really related to your marketing spend, but they do offer solutions to understand how it's performing. So we saw great results when it comes to awareness and even from ad recall. So if you think about tweet recall, how much people remember seeing the ad for Halls or that partnership, the video that was served, that was very successful as well.
And so what are the frustrations you have with digital personalization at scale? What do you wish it could do that it can't?
I think there's what we've been discussing recently is how can we bring more different triggers into our personalization, because sometimes you want to combine lots of elements. So you want to combine consumer location, consumer interest, and then you want to combine with the temperature, for instance, for holes. So sometimes, because it's fairly a new thing, you need to be mindful that you cannot combine all of that. So maybe you need to pick one or two depending on what is available in terms of capability. So I think that is something that maybe in the future will change. I think more and more partners are developing this capability of almost overlapping or bringing more data into your setup, what will be served, and actually what will trigger that creative to be pushed out. But I've seen some limitation so far. It doesn't mean that it is damaging. Let's say the idea of personalization at scale is really thinking, how can this be even better? So the more the partners that work with these develop their capabilities, I think the more robust and more sophisticated our campaigns will be in the future.
So how does digital personalization at scale work with big ideas? Because it's very prominent in more bottom of the funnel activity. So it's like, all right, here's a car, and we know this person likes surfing, so we'll put the car by the sea. So therefore, they get sort of a semi-personalized ad. Or if it's in an email, it's got your name, or users who like this also bought this, and it always feels that it's a kind of bottom of the funnel, last click type of execution. But looking at recent ads this week, like the KFC removing their slogan position that they've come up with, which is just the ad campaign just but taking out finger licking goods, which is clever in its own right. That's not personalized. That's just like a mass awareness. Works in every market, on every device, on every platform, indoor, outdoor. But it's not personalized. It's not digital personalization at scale. My question is digital personalization going to start changing big ideas, or do big ideas just need to be uniform and be seen in the same way by everyone?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because I think something we need to be mindful is that personalization at scale is not the solution for everything. And the first exercise a brand or a marketeer needs to go through is, do I need personalization at scale for this or not? I think the example you shared, which is a great one, I really like their idea, KFC latest campaign. I think probably the job to be done was more how to drive awareness to this huge campaign, which is a fairly a bold statement, I would say. So probably they didn't see a role for personalization at scale, and that's why it's so important to have a very clear strategy, really understand your brand, your category, and what you're trying to achieve. Because sometimes the answer will be, yes, I just need to drive mass awareness, I don't need personalization at scale. So once you're clear on that, it will help you, because I completely agree. This is, you start going really deep into the funnel, but that has to be in line with what you had defined. What is success? What success look like for your campaign? So I think there is no pressure to force fit personalization at scale in everything we do media related, but rather be mindful when that will actually help us to be more efficient and more effective with our communication.
So how do you get started with digital personalization? If someone's listening to this podcast and they're inspired by what you're talking about and they think, oh, that's right for my brand, what are the steps that they can take to make that happen?
Yeah, so I probably would just reinforce what I said now. Be very clear on your strategy and understand your brand, your consumer, your category. This is really fundamental. Define your objectives, what you're trying to achieve with that. And of course, you're going to need all the brand fundamentals very well rounded as well, very polished. And I'm talking about like brand positioning, and you're going to need a campaign idea as well. Then spend time to understand your growth consumer, who you want to talk to, who is your real audience. And then I think probably the best thing to do is make sure you engage with all the partners at early stage. And partners and stakeholders in this case, I'm talking about media agency, creative agency, and mostly important, the platforms like Facebook, Google. These guys, they are the experts and they have so much to contribute. So if you can get them on board and almost co-create, which is something I've been doing fairly often in my current role, is something that it give you so much and brings adds so much value to your campaign that it is really beneficial. And then once you're clear on that, that's when you're going to start defining your targeting strategy. So you're building your persona, your segments, and this is a combination of like passions, interests, motivations. Then you can bring another layer of occasions, time of the day, or different messaging that motivate that consumer. So it's important that you start playing with that, and maybe you're going to have like so many different scenarios and there's so many combinations, and you need to start narrowing down to the ones that will be more relevant. And then you move to what we would say building effective creatives. So based on your segment and knowing everything you know about them, what are the things we need to have in our segment? So your creative agents will play a vital role here to come up with something that conveys all of that. So it's important to have clarity in your message hierarchy and what you're trying to achieve. And then what you're going to need to do as well is, of course, work with your media agency to define not only a clear media plan, which channels we're going after, and what is the longevity of this campaign, how much reach we're going for, but you need to be a very robust learning agenda. As I mentioned before, it's important that you understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to learn, and what you do with that learning. You need to have action standard as an output from that experiment, because one of the principles of personalization scale is really monitor, track, optimize, and keep going. So it's really important that you have the ability to monitor and track thoroughly what you're doing. And that goes back to the point I made earlier about having results to prove how efficient it has been. And then you just keep improving as you go. I think be really open-minded. Sometimes you're gonna get it right. Sometimes maybe it will not be as successful as expected, but it's important that you understand what was the root cause for that performance. And then you go and you improve, you change, and you keep finding new solutions. But it's like an ongoing process that it does take time, it does take energy, but I strongly recommend because I think it definitely pays off.
So, Rafa, unfortunately, we're coming up to the end of the podcast, and thank you so much for sharing such a breadth of information, whether it's how you approach studying or the fact that you've switched careers, but all the way through to some very specific advice on how to nail digital personalization at scale. So thank you so much. If someone is inspired by what you've talked about and wants to reach out and get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, I think probably the best way will be LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Rafael Espesani. And yeah, I'm always happy to connect, have a chat, and I'll just say drop a message, introduce yourself, and then always happy to pick up from there.
And what makes a brilliant LinkedIn message to you?
I think just be honest and just set the agenda up front, what you're looking for or trying to get, because then it's also easier for me to understand your expectation and give you an answer that will be suitable for that.
Personalize the message.
Exactly. Yeah. Here we go.
Rafael, thank you so much. That was a real treat.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Tom.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.